Who was J.R.R. Tolkien? You just might be surprised. Hi friends, and welcome to my channel, Books, Stacks, and Stories. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien is well known today as being the author of The Lord of the Rings, a brilliant 3-volume work of fantasy, adventure, thrills, romance, and magic. It exploded onto the scene in 1954, soon becoming part and parcel of world subculture, an eternal classic, and was later wonderfully adapted to the big screen in 3 classic films from the year 2000 era. The films were widely praised and wonderfully done, but we're here to talk about those stunning books from which they sprang. Who was J.R.R. Tolkien? What was The Lord of the Rings all about, and what's a hobbit? J.R.R. Tolkien was an English writer, philologist, and Oxford professor who had a deep love of language and mythology. Born in South Africa in 1892 but raised in England, his academic career focused on Anglo-Saxon and medieval literature, first at Leeds and later at Oxford, where he became a leading scholar of Beowulf and Germanic myth. During World War I, he began to develop a private mythology that he later expanded upon as the basis for tales to be written for his own children. This mythology would later morph into Middle-earth, the world of hobbits, and The Lord of the Rings. But it was much more than a story. For The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien created entire languages, such as Elvish, which were written, spoken, or even sung, mythologies, histories and folklore, geography, and poetry. It all started with Tolkien's writing a book called The Hobbit, which was originally written for his children and introduced readers to the town of Hobbiton, the world of Middle-earth and the Shire, and the various adventures and conquests of the hobbit Bilbo Baggins, accompanied by a group of 13 dwarves on an ambitious and dangerous quest, which included his happening upon the One Ring of Power, quite by chance. The Hobbit was so successful, Tolkien's publishers wanted more, which opened the floodgates and led to his creation of the full trilogy of The Lord of the Ring, The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. What was The Lord of the Rings about?
An unassuming hobbit named Frodo, who lives in Hobbiton in the idyllic Shire in Middle-earth, inherits the magical One Ring from his uncle Bilbo that has the power to make the ring-bearer invisible, consumes the ring-bearer with desires and evil thoughts and ambitions, and gives the ability for world domination and terror. Mentored by Gandalf, the wisest of wizards, who is well aware of the dangers of the One Ring, slipping onto the wrong finger, sets the Hobbit, along with a fellowship of men, and Elf, a dwarf, and other hobbits, on an impossible quest to destroy the ring by carrying it to Mount Doom, which is a volcano of sorts, located in the center of Mordor, the nightmarish domain of the Dark Lord Sora, who is obsessed with the One Ring, like all who have possessed it previously, hungers for utter tyranny over the known world, and is generally feared and considered to be the worst of the worst. With the help of a former hobbit named Gollum, real name Smeagol, consumed by his addiction to the ring, which he had possessed for a time, armies of men on horses, wizards, eagles, and elves, the soon broken fellowship battles evil orcs, goblins, the spider Shelob, and the horrid Balrog, among other terrors, to ensure Frodo makes it to Mount Doom and eventually destroys the One Ring by tossing it into Mount Doom's fires, at the cost of a finger, the fiery death of Gollum, and the loss of a lot of pleasant time in the Shire, smoking pipeweed, eating mushrooms, and growing gardens.
It showcased several wonderful races of beings, including the aforementioned hobbits, elves, dwarves, wizards, orcs, and men,
among others.
But what about the actual books? The Hobbit was first published in 1937 in the UK, with a print run of 1,500 copies. This is the crown jewel of all Tolkien collecting, with only about 200 to 300 copies believed to have survived to today. The Lord of the Rings was written as a single continuous novel, but published in 3 volumes for economic and production reasons. Tolkien completed the manuscript between 1937 and 1949, but his publisher, Allen and Unwin, determined that issuing it as one book was too costly. The work was therefore released over the span of a year. The Fellowship of the Ring on July 29, 1954, The Two Towers on November 11, 1954, and The Return of the King on October 20, 1955. Although commonly called a trilogy, Tolkien always considered it a single work divided for practical publication needs. Tolkien never expected The Lord of the Rings to become the phenomenon phenomenon that it has, and had written the book to satisfy his own creative impulse. His own reputation grew in the 1950s, but he felt that the newfound attention was only distracting from his true academic work and family life. He was genuinely surprised when the book exploded in the 1960s and described the cult following as bewildering. He was grateful for the passionate readership, confused about how the hippies embraced Middle-earth, and overwhelmed by the fan mail and the visitors. He once said he felt swept away by a wave he never intended to create, and disliked being treated as a celebrity, describing that ordeal as making him feel like butter scraped over too much bread. However, he was deeply moved by the loyalty and passion of his readers and proud of his work. He saw himself as a scholar and storyteller, not a public figure, and the world's reaction to his work often felt surreal to him. Tolkien's influence extends not only to the fantasy genre in literature, which The Lord of the Rings helped to define and to create, but also to the other arts: music, painting, filmmaking, video games, and many more.
Too many to mention.
Tolkien retired from Oxford in 1968 and moved to Bournemouth, a quiet seaside town, with his wife Edith. Their life there was peaceful but lonely, with Edith's health declining. Edith died in 1971, leaving Tolkien devastated. He returned to Oxford and continued to revise and organize his legendarium, working on the Silmarillion, spending time with his children and grandchildren until he himself passed away on September 2nd, 1973. He is buried alongside Edith in Wolvercote Cemetery in North Oxford, England. Their headstone famously bears the names Luthien for Edith and Beren for Tolkien, reflecting the great love story from his legendarium that he associated with their marriage. Following Tolkien's death, his son Christopher took up his father's legacy, curating Tolkien's unfinished or related works and publishing them for all of the world. So the next time you think of The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, think of more than just the outstanding film representations. Think of the timeless books and remember how Professor Tolkien changed the world with the tale he originally wrote to entertain his children, but that grew into a titan of 20th century literature and profound influence across the world. And thanks for visiting. Please come back often and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing.